What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of the AST Call-In Show. I am super excited. I was doing a little screening, you got it, to make sure that everything comes through and is clear and sound for you guys. And I got to tell you, the energy that you guys brought last week to the All Steelers Talk Call-In Show that had me fired up, had me ready to go for an entire week, well, it was brought once again. You guys did not hold back. I am super excited about it. I will say that while I screen everything, I do not dive deep. I give a little, all right, intro's good, clear, precise. Let's move on before he dives into the question. So we still go raw into this, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited to bring you guys an AST Call-In Show live from the 2025 NFL Combine. Yesterday was way more than I anticipated. Omar Khan talked about a lot, addressed the quarterback situation, the wide receiver situation, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, and where they're heading in the NFL draft. And to be honest, I came in here, didn't have many expectations, never do when Omar, Mike Tomlin, Art Rooney, anybody talks. Go in there with a clean slate, looking for the best, hoping for something, got plenty. We dove into all of it yesterday on the live stream on the All Steelers Talk regular show. And today I'm diving into your questions. Appreciate every single one of our members. Thank you guys as always. For those of you who are not a member who would like to call in to the AST Call-In Show every single Wednesday and leave your question for me to answer, you could do so by going to the link in our description to become a member. With that, you will get the phone number for the voicemail. Leave your question. They will be answered every single Wednesday. All right, let's dive into it. Here we go.
Hey Noah, Tony here. Just wondering, is it just me or does it seem like there's a big drop off in the wide receiver class between the first top 4 and then the next one 5 and after that? Seems like there's really no second round draft pick there. But and I also heard from another show that during the Senior Bowl, the Steelers talked to wide receiver out of Colorado, Wester, I think his name was, and they told him not to play in the game because they've seen all he can do. Did you hear anything about that? And if it's true, doesn't that kind of suggest that they're waiting to pick him up maybe after the draft?
Shout out, first off, appreciate you. When it comes to the talent level, I agree. I think there are some second-round guys. I think Trey Harris, I think Lacey out of LSU are some interesting names that you could get in the middle of the draft, but I'm not totally sold on the talent level after the first 2 or 3 guys. And to be honest with you, I see more second-round guys than I do first-round guys. I see McMillan and Abuka as first-round pure talent. You go and get them if they're available. I think everybody else, Burden, Golden, Trey Harris, everybody after that kind of falls off. I think the talent level has a dip, and I'm not totally sold that it's going to work out if you do reach for one of those guys in the first round. As for Jimmy Horn at the East-West Shrine Bowl, I was actually the one who reported that, and I'm proud and excited that other shows were picking it up. I do think that they are going to try and get Jimmy Ward. He's been on both of my mock drafts. I just don't know where he's going to go. Teams are interested in him. He was convinced not to play in the East-West Shrine Bowl. If that's the case, then maybe other teams are going to improve his draft stock and really soar him up the board, not leave him available for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Nick and Noah, what's up, guys? It's Taylor. Yeah, so my question for you guys today is really kind of just a train of thought I've been having, and then I guess kind of a question for your thoughts on it. But, I've been thinking so much, I think we all have, about why the Steelers keep hitting a wall late in the season and they can't win these playoff games. And then I keep hearing these comments from other players about how, Tomlin and the organization in general, we've been doing the same things over and over and over again for so many years, not making adjustments. Do you think that part of the reason anytime you're going to have a 5-game losing streak at the end of the season like the Steelers did, there's lots of reasons behind it. But, we've been seeing a pattern now of years of late season collapses, big or small, and then just completely falling flat in the playoffs. And I'm starting to think that the reason for this is because the good teams in the NFL, especially the well-coached teams, towards the end of the year, make adjustments. They make changes. They assess what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. They make those changes. And then certainly once they get to the playoffs, they step their game up and they might show some plays and some looks on offense and defense that they didn't show during the regular season, and they continue to evolve and adapt. And do you think that that is the main reason? Because I'm starting to think that it is the reason why the Steelers just cannot seem to get past that first round of the playoffs and can't seem to get better as the season goes on because of Mike Tomlin's stubbornness and his, how he refuses to make any adjustments in game or in preparation for games late in the season and certainly in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think I'm making more out of that just because I don't know what's going on in the preparation rooms and in the locker rooms before the games, but do you think that could be why we keep seeing this falling flat at the end of the season? Thanks, guys.
All right, shout out. That was a great analysis, and to be honest with you, I think there's some truth to it. I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are a team that do not adjust very well and do not kind of hide their bullets or save some bullets for later in the season. And because of that, it comes back to definitely have some negative impact. I also think the Steelers, I don't know if stubborn's the word. I think just, they have a game plan. They always stick to that game plan. Nothing gets real crazy. And because of that, it's not lack of adjustments. It's lack of diversity, lack of the Steelers are we do this team and they don't have any other tricks, they don't have anything to adjust to, I would say. I think that works for some teams. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are a prime example that the Eagles went into the entire season and said, this is how we're going to win. And that's how they won. And if you're that good, you'll pull it off. The Steelers are not that good. And that's the problem is I think if the Steelers were that good, which I don't think they are right now. And to be honest with you, I think that the playoffs and the drought has more to do with the lack of talent than lack of adjustments, at least in recent years. But where they are right now, yeah, they do not save anything. They are a one-trick pony. That one trick works if your team's good enough. The Steelers are just frankly not good enough right now.
Hey guys, Rob Little from Vermont. Shocker, it is a Steelers fan in Vermont. Anyways, got a question. Tucker is going to be released by the Ravens.
Oh, geez.
Is there any chance that he pairs up with Watson in Cleveland? It seems like they would get along really well. Your thoughts of Justin Tucker going to Cleveland? Okay.
Appreciate you, Rob Little there. That's I'll leave that one for everybody to form an opinion around and if they would work out. But I appreciate your question for sure.
What is up, all Steelers talk? Rob Little here from
Hey, we got back-to-back Rob.
Vermont, home of Ben and Jerry's in maple syrup. Shocker, there's a Steelers fan here in the northeast of New England. I got a quick question. The Ravens are going to release Justin Tucker.
We went twice.
I know the Browns.
We went twice here, back to back. First off, Rob, I appreciate you. I didn't know Ben and Jerry's was from Vermont, so shout out. And I'm a big ice cream guy. I was on a strict diet. Brother's getting married in June. I can't be fat at my brother's wedding. I got to give a good speech and stuff. I've been out here eating ice cream every day. 2 days. I've been 48 hours. I've been in Indianapolis. 48 hours have been just nothing but crappy food, burgers, steaks, and finishing every night, whether I am full or not full, with ice cream. And shout out.
Hey, Nick. Hey, Noah. Hey, this is Michael. I just want to know if the Steelers have found out what was going on with all the hamstring issues that the players were having this year, because there were an awful lot. I didn't know if they addressed that in the offseason or not. Thank you. Bye.
Michael, appreciate you as always. The hamstring stuff, the soft tissue injuries are, I think, a bit of a concern, but they're pretty much everywhere across the board. In the NFL today, it's so difficult to control those things simply because the game is moving so much faster and guys are stopping so much quicker. And the impact, it used to be like you're running 16, 15 miles an hour and you hit somebody. Okay, now you're running 22 miles an hour when you hit somebody. That's a pretty drastic stop for your body to, make a shift. So I think that's what's going on. They did change pretty much their entire strength and conditioning staff last year. So they are making efforts to improve those things. Yes.
Hey, Nick and Noah. I hope you're having a wonderful morning in the Berg. This is Stephen Cornfield, your favorite UPS driver calling in. My question for the day is there any way we're able to give a question to you to get to one of the players during season that we can get answered? Thanks, man.
Shout out Steven, man. Appreciate you. You are my favorite UPS driver, so always appreciate it. I mean, yeah, you guys could definitely send them in. Send them, if you're a member especially, send them to the email. Say, hey, if you could ask this question, I would imagine that email gets filled with a lot of, Russ, why do you suck? And those questions obviously can't be asked. But if it's a good question that could definitely provide some context to what I'm looking to get out of that locker room that day, certainly. And if it's something that I think would bring plenty of context and answers to a very large audience, yeah, I would be definitely happy to pass that question along and make sure that I get it asked in the locker room. That's a good question. I appreciate you, Steven.
Hey, Noah, Nick, Doug Blysoon calling from Philadelphia. My question today would be, how is the combine for visitors to watch? Is it a worthwhile event? Is it one of those things that we should consider doing, being football fans, or is it something that's not necessary, not interesting from the spectator perspective? Thanks for the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Shout out Philadelphia. My sister lives in Philly. My one-day brother-in-law lives in Philly. So shout out good old Philadelphia. When it comes to the combine, I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. Okay. The combine's cool. It's fun. It's a good experience. There's nothing exhilarating about it. Like it's strange once you're there. It's so quiet. There's no commentary. There's nobody cheering. Like it's very quiet. You don't hear Rich Eisen. You don't hear the NFL Network guys talking. You just hear whistles blowing, a guy running, and then a guy stopping to run. That is literally it. The concession stands and stuff are like closed off to a very small portion of the stadium. It's just like, it's almost eerie. Eerie would be the word. Like I go over, I'll probably go over tomorrow and check out the defensive linemen. But that's it. I'm not like I want to go there every single day. It kind of, I don't know, like you walk in and you're like, all right, this is cool. And then you're there for a half hour and you're like, okay, I think I've seen enough of this. I need some noise, some people around me to speak to. So I don't know. I wouldn't push. If somebody asked me, like if you were like, hey, should I go to Indianapolis for the combine? I'd say that's a pretty far trip to go to the combine. If you're in Indy, if you're close to Indy, which I don't know what's close to Indy, but if you're close to Indy, sure, but from Philly, from Pittsburgh, I don't know, man. I'm not that sold on the NFL combine as like a fan experience. I think it's cool on television. I think the city of Indianapolis is one of my favorite places. I mean, you look at this view. Look at this view behind me. That's a parking lot and it's still beautiful. Crazy. The city of Indianapolis is one of my favorite cities in the whole world. Just the combine itself, if fans got to interview players and meet with coaches and do all that stuff, different. But just to go in there and watch, I don't know if I'm totally sold on that experience for the fans. I hate to be the bummer, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that would be my honest opinion.
Hey, Noah,
perfect timing.
Cody calling. Man, I was just curious. I was watching the 84 Lumber Mike Tomlin show, and Zach Frazier was on there. And it got me thinking about how him and Justin Fields struggled to snap the ball at the beginning of the year, like with
True.
the missed, like the communication errors. I don't know if that was, the left guard's fault or I don't know whose fault that was, but how can they work to fix that chemistry between the two so that doesn't happen as much in the upcoming year? I know that. I mean, if we get a new quarterback? Do you think is it Zach Frazier? He did great this year, but I'm just curious because he didn't have no problems with Russell Wilson, but it seems like Justin Fields really struggled. And then also on a shorter note, I was curious who you thought needs to have the biggest comeback next year in 2025. Would it be Joey Porter Jr., T.J. Watt, Troy Fautanu, Roman Wilson, Mika Fitzpatrick, Broderick Jones, Pat Queen, and you can't say all of the above. Oh, you can only take at least two. So thanks, Noah. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you. We'll start with Frazier and Justin Fields. That was a concern, and I think that that's a concern that a little bit gets overlooked as time passes, that we forget about, and we can't forget about that. The way I look at that was it's Justin Fields. You know, those issues went away when Russ was there. It clearly was Justin Fields. The Nate Herbig thing earlier was, again, like it had to be Justin. Justin was the common denominator in this entire situation. But at the same time, you get a full off season to kind of learn and develop that. I have faith that if the first thing Justin Fields needs to do this offseason as the Steelers starting quarterback is learn how to take a snap under center, he can learn how to do that. You know, I'm pretty confident in that if they have to teach him how to do that. So I'm not totally concerned about Justin Fields and the snaps. I will be if they start, but I do think it's one of the easier things that you can learn as a quarterback when it comes to, and it's not Zach Frazier. You know, it wasn't. I don't think any of it was Zach Frazier. I mean, he's been snapping the football his whole life. He's pretty freaking good at it. I mean, he was top 5, top 7 center in the NFL last year. I'm not putting it on Zach Frazier. Maybe it was, maybe I don't know, but it just feels like it was Justin Fields. When it comes to who's got to step up, who's got to have the biggest comeback, that's a great question. I'll give you 2. I'm glad that you gave me 2, because if I had to pick one, it would have been tough. I'll give you 2. I think TJ's the biggest one. I don't even know if I'd call it a comeback. You know, it's wild to say that a TJ Watt comeback is Defensive Player of the Year finalist and not a Defensive Player of the Year award. But I think TJ's got to come back and be like that unstoppable, you are the reason that the Steelers defense is this good player. And that's a tall task, but one that TJ has put on his shoulders for years, and I expect him to continue to do that and do it at a high level. TJ starts that. If TJ Watt is dominant, the Steelers are dominant. That's just how it works. Like, the Steelers defense is always much better when TJ is a force that cannot be stopped. I mean, you could go through last season, and when TJ was hot, when TJ was doing his thing, the Steelers defense was way better than when TJ was a ghost. So it starts with TJ, obviously. Joey Porter Jr. would be my second. Minka, I don't know what a comeback would be at this point. I think Minka's good at times. I think Minka's not good at times, you know, but I also think that, like, when Minka makes a mistake, he's allowed to make a mistake because he's trying to do something great. Like, Minka doesn't, that's the thing. It's like, if Minka's out of place, it's not because Minka doesn't know what's going on. It's because Minka tried to make a bigger play because he's allowed to. That's what he's supposed to be doing. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Joey Porter got beat a lot this past season. He had a sophomore slump, and he needs to turn around. Like, I'll be very honest. Joey Porter Jr. is the guy that you're watching and looking at right now going, you are the star corner of the Steelers. You're the future at the position. You're the future of the defense. You are the building block with Keanu Benton and Peyton Wilson right now, and Patrick Queen and Nick Herbig and whoever they add in this year's draft. And you got to play like that. That's what you have to do. And I think he's capable of it. I have a lot of high hopes for Joey Porter Jr. this season, but those 2 would be my big ones. If I had to go number 3 and number 4, just to put them in order, this is not anywhere close to TJ. Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones would be next on those lists, because if the Steelers' offensive line is good, the Steelers are a much better offense. You know, everything starts in the trenches in the NFL, and you have to be able to block guys and have a dominant defense, or dominant offense, and that starts with the dominant offensive line. They have the pieces. They do. I don't know if Broderick Jones is going to be good. I have no idea. I think Troy Fautanu is going to be great. I look at those two. If they could bounce back, the rest of this line is in a pretty good spot. So those would be my 3 and my 4.
Hello, Noah and Nick. This is your friend and loyal listener, Wes Bergman,
What's
diehard
up?
Steelers fan, born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. My question for today's show is, please rate each of the following scenarios by great, good, fair, or poor. The Steelers land Higgins in free agency and draft Ibuka. The Steelers land Higgins, but don't draft Ibuka. The Steelers draft Ibuka, but miss or pass on Higgins. And finally, the Steelers do none of the above and instead settle for less exciting options at wide receiver. Thanks as always for what you guys do. AST is the best Steelers pod in the biz. That's real talk. This is Wes Bergman signing off for now. Peace.
Hey, I appreciate you, Wes. That was awesome. All right, we'll start at the top here. Good, great, or poor. T. Higgins and Emeka Egbuka. I mean, that's great, right? That is, I don't know if everybody saw it, but T. Higgins dropped a little cryptic message last night with the cap, probably saying, hey, Duke Tobin, I know that you said a lot of good things at the NFL Combine, but you mean them. We are still nowhere close to a deal, and I'm going to play on a $10 million less than what I deserve deal this season. That's not acceptable. And I agree. I'm all team T. Higgins here. Like he deserves his money, whether it's with Pittsburgh or somewhere else. He does not deserve to pay or to make $10 million less. I get it. It's $10 million. I get it. But that $10 million, I mean, you deserve it. He deserves it. T. Higgins, Emeka Egbuka, that's great. That's easily great. I mean, that is the perfect outcome for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You, at that point, can move on from George Pickens if you choose so. You could let him rock for one more season if you choose so. You could keep him for 8 games and trade him at the deadline if you choose so. You hope that Calvin Austin continues to take a step forward, and I expect that he does. You look at Roman Wilson as a guy that I don't have high expectations for him this season, but I do think that he's going to become a part of the offense and have an opportunity to contribute. And I think that's massive. So you now have 4, maybe 5 very capable wide receivers. You bring back Benny Skoranek because that dude's a stud. And there's your 5. That's a phenomenal wide receiver core. That is the biggest jump you can make in the NFL when it comes to your wide receivers from a year-to-year basis. Easy. The Steelers draft Emeka Egbuka, but pass on T. Higgins. I think that's good. I wouldn't say that's great. I would say that's good. You got somebody at that point. Chances are you're keeping George Pickens. I will say that lowers to bad if you trade George Pickens and go get Cooper Kupp. I'm not totally sold on that situation. But I think it's good if you keep George Pickens, you draft Emeka Egbuka, you pass on T. Higgins. I still think you have Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson at the good 4. They're super young. In a year, you move on, and you got to replace George Pickens, which isn't ideal. It's not ideal that you're going to have to replace George Pickens in this scenario. And I think that's the biggest thing is T. Higgins and Emeka Egbuka gives you that comfort to move on, to get what you could for George. If that's the way that they go, they could keep him. They could look to extend him. Yesterday, Omar had some, big like, hey, we want George to be great here. Yeah, they do, and they're going to see if George can't be great here. If that works out, awesome. If it doesn't work out, then the Steelers might have to go an alternate route. And at that point, it's going to become difficult to replace George Pickens. So I would say that's good. Leaves you with some concerns, but it's good. If you get T. Higgins, don't get Emeka Egbuka. I'm still putting that in great. T. Higgins and George Pickens, who you could go draft a wide receiver next year. You can figure it out. I still think that's phenomenal. That's a great wide receiver core for whoever your quarterback is. And I think that works out beautifully for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you pass on, but I mean, that's terrible. That's terrible. If the Steelers walk into this season with Cooper Kupp, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson, I'm not satisfied. I don't think that's good enough. I do think that they can go with options like Chris Godwin or Darius Slayton, and that improves my mood on the situation. But I think if you pass on both and you end up with I don't know, with a Cooper Kupp, with a Deebo Samuel, that's a terrible move. I would put that in terrible.
Hey, Noah. I had another question for you. It's Maddie. So many articles come out daily every hour about,
Yeah.
oh, they're going to pick this, oh, they're going to pick that, which 90% of it is noise. How do you differentiate between what's noise and what's not noise?
It's a great question.
Also, not sure if my other one cut off, but I was asking, even are they using Russell Wilson as a backup plan for Justin Fields? So say if they don't land him, are they just using him as their backup plan, or are they actually thinking about legitimately going with him as a quarterback? Thanks.
Shout out, Maddie. Yeah, your other question did get cut off. I'm glad that you got to ask it again. Both great questions. We'll start with the noise. How do you differentiate the noise? Sometimes it's tough, and for fans, it is super tough. I'm thankful that, for me at least, like I will always present the noise to you guys. I will present it, and we will differentiate if it's noise or if it's not noise. And, I think me and Nick got a good nose for whether it's noise or not noise. I think the fact that, we have people inside the building, we have league sources, we have all of this to present information and decipher what is real and what is not is super helpful. And that's what you got to do. Like there are a lot of blogs out there. There are a lot of people talking. There are a lot of talking heads, man, who they just talk and they love the noise and they're looking for the noise and they want to create more noise. And I get it, but there's a lot of people out there that will understand and break down what's real and what's not real. And I'm grateful to be one of those people. But that's how you got it's unfortunate, but that's how you have to look at it. Is you got to find the people that you can rely on, the reporters that you can rely on, and you have to honestly, like, everything's got to come with a grain of salt. What side is this coming from? Who do you think the sources are in this situation? Is it Russ's people? Is it the team? Is it the league? Is it nobody? Is it the janitor? Like, you never know. And I think that I think you have to kind of take everything as a question and kind of feel what your gut's saying and who you trust in these matters. When it comes to Russ, I mean, they do view Russ as a backup, or like a backup option, but he is like a very close number 2. Like they are looking at it saying, if the time runs out and we go into free agency, or it's the day before free agency, and Justin doesn't look like he is 100% sold on signing here, they'll move on. And they'll get Russ. They're going to protect themselves at the end of this. And that's kind of what this is. Russ is a safety blanket, but he's a safety blanket that if Justin tries to push this out too long, the Steelers will move on. So I do think I view him as a backup option. He is a backup option for the Steelers, but one that right now, I mean, every day they get closer becomes more and more of a realistic number 1 option if Justin does not take a deal.
Sir Strack, Lord Belsk, it's potato salad again. I'm watching today's episode, and I love Pat Freiermuth as well. I can't agree with you more, Noah. But one thing I started noticing, granted it was towards the latter half of last season, so it very well could have been an injury that wasn't reported, bone bruise or something that Pat's fighting through. But it looked like he was kind of folding under contact. And folding might not be the best way to say it, but I vividly remember the Steelers missing the playoffs, losing to the Jags week 16 back in the heyday, and Heath Miller fighting for every dang yard he could get on a 5-yard curl route when we needed 8. And that made it a lot easier to swallow that season. And seeing Pat fold in contact, it's just not a Steelers tight end to me. He set me up to expect different. So my question being, it's Tomlin's way with running backs. Would you have any interest in seeing Pat maybe put on 10, 20 pounds this offseason and see if that helps both on his blocking and his physicality on a ball carrier end?
So I think that if you look at Pat's work throughout the entire season, I don't know if that argument holds up. There have been a number of times in 2024 where, you were watching Pat break tackles and run down the sideline and give the Steelers everything they possibly can. Towards the end of the season, things were different, but, you're hot, like, to highlight one player in the midst of everybody stinks is, tough. I don't think I'm asking Pat to put weight on. I think Pat's good, and I think that if you could put him in a situation where he's catching 7-8 balls a game, he's phenomenal. He puts that effort into it. I honestly, like, he dropped a pass or two at the end of the season. I have a bigger issue with that. Like, you look at the playoff game, you look at Cincinnati, he drops passes, and like that's where my issue comes in with Pat at the end of the season. But I think Pat had overall a year that you look at and take away as a positive. I don't think that he's a fold under contact guy. You know, I'd have to go back and really like dive into the late season and see, you know, exactly what we're talking about here. But I think there are a lot of moments, probably equal or more, where you can look at Pat Freiermuth and say, oh, Pat just got 15 yards when he should have got 4, you know? And there are a lot and I get like, okay, I could highlight one moment, like the third down, should have got the third down or the fourth, whatever it was, and 2, and he couldn't get it. Like that one, huge. I get that one. And that is a fault of Pat's, but I don't think it's like a fold under pressure. I think it's just like Pat's got to learn how to get through that. You know, he's got to learn how to. I don't think that it's because Pat's not physical. I think it's because that was just a bad moment of Pat, and I do think there's improvement there. There's room for improvement there, certainly, but I don't think it's like it's his body type or anything like that, or his play style. I just honestly think those were bad moments for Pat, stuff that he needs to learn on, and hopefully he does. All right, let's finish it off with this one.
Hey, Noah. So I have something here that I think would be considered a bit of a wild take, and I'm going to drop it and just let you weigh in on it and, you know, tell me what you think.
All about it.
I think that if Justin Fields is not there at QB, we should absolutely go all in on Aaron Rodgers. And my reasoning for this is because I think he gives us the highest ceiling and the lowest floor. Because, you know, when Aaron Rodgers was in his prime, I mean, he was one of the best QBs to ever play the game. And, you know, I know he's had the Achilles injury and he's older now, but I mean, it was also the Jets. And, you know, I mean, there's been older QBs who have bounced back from injuries like that before. Well, maybe not an Achilles, but similar. And I think that, you know, potentially he gives us the highest ceiling. Whereas at the same time, you know, I think this has potential to go so disastrously bad that it would give us our first losing season in like over 2 decades. And if it does, then that puts us in position to get a QB, and at the same time would probably move the timeline a little bit up on the Mike Tomlin situation. If at a minimum, it would probably open the door for the discussion because, you know, there's no way all the negative press that would surround the team wouldn't get back to Art Rooney in some way, and he would, you know, he'd have to look at that. So, you know, that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, what's your thoughts?
First off, I appreciate you. Love a solid hot take. I think I agree with the ceiling. Like I think that if Aaron Rodgers clicks for some reason and he does have like this is it, this is the final shebang for Aaron Rodgers, I think it does work out really well for the Steelers. I do think that, like any team, if Aaron Rodgers somehow has a resurgence here, any team who has him has a massive opportunity to do something huge. Floor wise, I hear what you're saying. Like, you know, you get an opportunity to get a quarterback. I think that's huge. I think the Steelers need an opportunity to get a quarterback. I think next year's draft, there's 2, maybe 3, depending on how you view Drew Aller and the kid out of LSU. I think both of them are projects. I think Arch Manning is a huge unknown. To be super honest with you, college football has a quarterback problem right now. There are no great quarterbacks. The NFL is running out of great quarterbacks. The quarterback position is it's just a bad time. You know, there's the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes, and it's pretty steep drop off after like the first 7 or 8 guys on that list. When I look at the upcoming class, I mean, yeah, you could have an opportunity at that. That would be huge. It would not accelerate anything on Mike Tomlin. It wouldn't open the door for discussion. Nothing. You have to look at it like this. The Pittsburgh Steelers, and I hate to call Mr. Rooney out like this, but the Pittsburgh Steelers have not paid 2 coaches to do one job. They have not fired a coach in any position and replaced him before that contract expires since like 2000 or something. It's crazy how long they have done it. There's no chance they're giving Mike Tomlin $15 million a year, firing him and paying that $15 million, plus they're going to get another coach. It's not going to happen. That's just not what they do. So, and that's the thing, like with Rooney, like he doesn't own Walmart, you know what I mean? He's not David Tepper. Like, it's just the Steelers. You know, he doesn't have this mad, crazy cash to be throwing around all over the place. That's the problem with a local small market like Pittsburgh. When it comes to like the acceleration of the clock with the development and the rebuild, yeah, I think that works out. I don't know, like, you know, Mike Tomlin's pulled much less for much more in the past. So you have to take that into consideration and say there's always the possibility that he just somehow does this. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it again, even with Aaron Rodgers being terrible. Willie, I have no idea. I think I agree with that. I like Aaron Rodgers more than I like, and people are going to get mad at this, I like the Aaron Rodgers situation more than I like Russ. I think the Russ thing is great, but I think it's such a middle line. There's no huge upside. There's no huge downside that it just leaves you really boring. And Aaron Rodgers at least has like a huge upside, a very small chance that upside works, but a huge upside, massive downside. Justin Fields is the same way. And I think this is the year. Take a shot. Who cares? Take a shot. Justin Fields should be the shot. If it's not, take a shot. You know, don't stay boring. Nobody wants to see a 10-6 team again who loses in the first round of the playoffs. It's not what anybody wants. So, in my opinion, shoot for the stars. I do think I agree with you that Aaron Rodgers at least has a star left to shoot for. Chances are that star is pretty close to burnt out, but maybe it's there. I appreciate that one. All right, y'all. We're heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to the latest episode of the AST Call-In Show. Appreciate all of you guys. The energy was awesome. These things are getting so much fun. I'm having a blast doing them here, especially in Indianapolis. Feels special to be able to bring it to you live from the NFL Combine. Make sure that if you are not a member, that you become a member by clicking the link in our description below. And if you're listening to this, it's on our YouTube page, the membership tab. You will then be given a number that you can call, leave your questions for the call-in show, along with an email where you could ask me questions directly. All right. With that said, guys, we will be back later today with our regular show live from the NFL Combine. Until then, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.